Last time I promised some hardcore technical details in this video, so let's get straight into it. Guild Wars 2's combat system is inspired by a multitude of existing combat systems, and ArenaNet basically went with the jack-of-all-trades approach by mixing all the styles they drew from. Because of this, you're likely to see features that feel familiar, but you're just as likely to see features that feel unfamiliar. I'm going to try to get rid of this unfamiliar feeling by explaining how Guild Wars 2's skills work, and I'll start by quickly categorizing them. Guild Wars 2's skills can broadly be split up into the categories of ground-targeted skills, lock-on skills, projectile attacks, leaps, and point-blank AoEs. Some skills fall into multiple categories, while some skills don't fall into any of these categories. In particular, when I talk about projectile attacks, I only mean attacks that shoot projectiles but can't be put into any other category. Likewise, when I talk about leaps, I'm not including ground-targeted dashes. I can't possibly cover all the outliers, but hopefully this will set you up to properly investigate your skills the next time you play. I'll start with ground-targeted skills because they aren't much different to what you see in other games. All I want to say is that it helps if you turn on fast with range indicator and lock ground-targeted skills at maximum range. The first option lets you cast skills really quickly, but also gives you the flexibility to aim your skills by holding down the skill's relevant key. Without the second option, you'll have a hard time casting skills at max range. If you aim too close, you're obviously not casting at max range, but if you aim too far, you won't cast a skill at all. As an aside, teleports like Shadow Step or Blink only work if you can walk to your target destination without jumping or falling. So for example, I can't blink onto this loom, but I can blink onto that ramp up there. The other four skill types that I mentioned use a special aiming system, and it's good to know how that system works. In most games, projectile attacks either shoot projectiles at the center of your screen or the projectiles home in on your target, and likewise for leaps. Guild Wars 2 kind of does something in between. Projectile attacks and leaps are aimed at wherever your character is looking, while most lock-on skills require your selected target to be in your field of vision, which is approximately a 90-degree cone. To help with aiming, Guild Wars 2 often turns your character when you activate a skill. If you're in action camera mode, starting an attack simply turns your character to look at wherever your reticle is pointing. If you're not in action camera mode, casting any of these skill types while standing still will usually make your character turn to face your selected target. On the other hand, if you're moving away from your target without action camera mode, only leaps and dashes will turn your character to face your target, but projectile attacks and most lock-on skills won't even cast. Finally, without action camera mode, some lock-on skills can attack targets behind you even if you're moving away from them. But if you're in action camera mode, all lock-on skills need your target to be in your character's field of vision. Because of all this, I like to toggle action camera mode on and off quite frequently. Now let's get into a bit more detail. Lock-on skills directly attack your selected enemy, but may sometimes attack via missiles that can be blocked or reflected. If you haven't selected a target or your target is out of range, lock-on skills will fail to cast and will usually go on cooldown. If a targeted enemy is out of range, your skill icons will have red lines at the bottom to warn you. As I already said, some lock-on skills work on targets behind you even while you're moving away. Another thing to note is that if there's a wall or terrain between you and your target, you'll lose line of sight and your lock-on skill will be obstructed, causing it to go on cooldown without doing any damage. Recently, ArenaNet added an option that lets you retarget lock-on skills mid-cast. Make sure you enable it. Projectile attacks shoot a projectile in the direction that your character is facing and do not require a target. Because of how Guild Wars 2 helps with your aiming and how lock-on skills work, you might be led to believe that all projectiles follow their target. However, this is not true for projectile attacks. Remember that I'm talking about all the skills that produce projectiles but don't count as ground-targeted or lock-on skills. Once the projectile has left your weapon, it will follow a downward trajectory that does not veer left or right. In fact, if someone is shooting arrows at you and you're far enough, you can actually avoid the arrows by sidestepping. Of course, projectile attacks can be obstructed just like lock-on skills. Leaps and dashes behave very similarly to projectile attacks, with your body acting as the projectile. If your leap is not ground targeted, it will follow the same rules as projectile attacks with some retreats accepted. Retreats always move you away from wherever your character is facing, but some retreats don't turn your character to face your target. However, all retreats respect the action camera reticle. Like projectiles, your leap's trajectory is decided once you start it, so if you're leaping towards an enemy they can easily move to avoid the hit, and if you try to leap at a target moving away from you, your leap will fall short. Untargeting your enemies will restore your leaps to full range, but only if you have auto-targeting off. Moreover, if you have auto-targeting enabled, you'll be unable to leap past an enemy or away from them even if you have them untargeted, because the game will just target your enemy for you. I think most players disable auto-targeting. On the other hand, action camera mode will ignore auto-targeting unless your target is already in your field of vision. Using a point-blank AoE while targeting an enemy will not move you towards that target, like you may have seen in some other games. Instead, you damage exactly those enemies in range regardless of what you're targeting. This includes all of the melee attacks in the game that aren't leaps. Other than that, point-blank AoEs behave just as you'd expect. Unlike projectile attacks and lock-on skills, point-blank AoEs can't be obstructed and can attack through walls, so use them to damage an enemy while denying them line of sight. I forgot to mention, but ground targeted AoEs can attack through walls as well. And of course, you don't need to target anyone to use a point-blank AoE. Okay, deep breath. Hopefully that made some things clearer. Now what else makes Guild Wars 2's combat system kinda unique? For one, everyone should be aware of the combo system. I won't go into too much detail here, but in short, you pull off a combo by using a combo finisher and a combo field. Combo finishers come in three types: leaps, projectiles, and blasts, each of which create a different effect. You can check if a skill can combo by looking at its tooltip. When you pull off a combo, a little heart will pop up on your screen telling you what the resulting effect is. And you can combo with an ally's field, and your allies can combo with your fields, and because the combo doesn't use up the field, you can use combos to stack up might, stealth, or healing. When you use a combo finisher on multiple fields, it will use the oldest field, which can be pretty annoying at times. Moving on, there's one last overarching thing that makes Guild Wars 2's combat feel familiar yet unfamiliar. That is, Guild Wars 2 mixes dynamic combat, like you'd see in an action game, with static combat, like you'd see in a traditional casting-based MMO. In part 3 I talked about how you can move during your cast, so this time let's talk about how the Guild Wars 2 casting system works. When you look at the tooltip for a skill, the top right usually has the cooldown and the cast time. If there isn't a cast time, it's an instant cast skill. Instant cast skills are very nice because they usually don't interrupt other things that you might be doing, and can be cast simultaneously to other skills. As such, instant cast skills can obviously add to your DPS, but they also have other nice uses. For example, in PvP or World v World, you can secure a stomp on an enemy by using these skills to avoid your enemy's downstate skills. Usually this is done by giving yourself invulnerability, stability, or stealth, but you can also use a teleport to temporarily move out of range of your enemy, all without cancelling the stomp animation. Speaking of which, if you're interested in PvP or World v World, you really should look at what each class's downstate skills are, and what your tools are for getting around them. If a skill isn't instant cast, it comes in two types: motion cast or rooted cast. The only difference between these two is that the latter makes you stand still and will be cancelled if you try to move during the cast animation. Leaps and dashes also remove your ability to walk, but I think of them as motion cast skills because A, you're moving, and B, using your movement keys won't cancel them. Motion cast and rooted cast skills also include channels, but all you need to know about them is that a channel is a skill that does something during the cast animation, not just at the end. To use these motion cast or rooted cast skills efficiently, it's important to know how the Guild Wars 2 skill queuing system works. Combat in Guild Wars 2 is about consciously planning your next attack or combo, instead of the button mashing you may be accustomed to from other games. The way skill queuing works in this game might make you think that Guild Wars 2 forgives button mashing, but in actuality, it's just trying to enable seamless rotations. For the rest of this video, let's ignore instant cast skills. When you start a motion cast or rooted cast skill, three things happen. 1. Your character carries out the animation. 2. There's a yellow bar in the middle that shows you how far you are through the cast. Note that channels or skills with multiple components get special yellow bars. 3. The relevant skill icon flashes. If you dodge, use a higher priority skill, weapon swap, or weapon stow during a cast animation, all of this will stop. The cast will cancel and the skill will go on reduced cooldown. And like I said, moving will cancel a rooted cast skill. Now, during a cast animation, you can press any lower priority skill to queue it without cancelling your initial cast. Only one skill can be queued at a time, so trying to queue two skills will remove the first one from the queue. Also, skills only stay on the queue for about a second. A queued skills icon will flash just like the skill you're currently casting, and you should use this information to tighten up your DPS rotations. Once your initial cast ends, your queued skill will immediately cast. Because of how this queuing system works, it's okay but unnecessary to spam your next skill while waiting for your current one to finish casting. However, this is a bad habit to get into. If you spam a skill that doesn't have a cooldown because it uses initiative or charges, or a skill that has a second part, you'll double cast, which isn't always desirable. Anyway, I think I'll end this video here. Thanks for watching, and I hope all this technical stuff hasn't been too boring and that you got some use out of it. I definitely left out some things, like after cast delays, and I told some blatant lies, all in the hopes of keeping the video short, so feel free to ask questions in the comments. Feedback would be appreciated as well.
Our problems just got worse.
One of them just powered up. Replenishing.